Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Introduction to Sociology, Unit 6. Today we'll be talking about religion. What we'll be doing today is looking at basic concepts related to religion. We'll be looking at the different varieties of religion, theories of religion, and then gender and religion. And this will hopefully help you with your reading report, which is due on the 16th of May. And finally, I'll ask you a couple of questions for you to answer at home that we'll be dealing with during the discussion forum. So, let's have a look at what religion is. Now, religion can be defined as a set of beliefs, symbols, and practices that is based on the idea of the sacred and or supernatural. Now, some religions involve a god or gods, but they are always, and some religions do not. But within each religion, there's always a set of beings or attitudes inspiring an attitude of awe or wonder in the individual who is part of a religious group. Some of the figures that inspire these attitudes of awe and wonder can be human figures, such as in the ethical religions, Buddha or Confucius, or God-like figures or God figures, such as the Hindu gods or Jesus Christ. And with religions such as Islam, we see that people like Muhammad are held up in high esteem. And these are some of the figures that are meant to inspire these attitudes of awe and wonder within religions. Each religion has a different set of rituals that is involved. And some of these rituals include prayer, chanting, singing, eating certain kinds of foods at certain times of the year, fasting. And all of these rituals are meant to cement the belief, as well as to bring the community of believers closer together. For example, prayer plays an important part within Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And Muslims pray at five times a day. And a lot of significance is tied to that ritual of prayer. There are also various varieties or types of religion, and we'll be looking a little bit more at that right now. Firstly, there are monotheistic religions, and the predominant monotheistic religions in the modern world today are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Judaism being the oldest of the three, dating back to about 1000 BC. And Judaism is based on the belief in a God, a single God, who created heaven and earth, and that God is called Yahweh. And Judaism involves an intricate set of beliefs and moral codes which have been prescribed by God in order to direct the behavior and moral development of people who follow Judaism. Until the creation of Israel in 1948, following the Second World War, there was no state of which Judaism was the official religion. Jewish communities which survived the Second World War in Europe, North Africa and Asia, although they were frequently persecuted at the time, created a Jewish state which is currently known as Israel. It is not a religious state, however. Then Christianity, which is an offshoot of Judaism, was, well, a lot of Jewish writings were incorporated within Christianity, and Jesus himself was an Orthodox Jew. So Christianity started out as a sect within Judaism, and then became a distinct religion thereafter. When Jesus lived, his disciples saw him as the Messiah, or the anointed one, for whom the Jewish people had been waiting for a number of millennia. And the early spread of Christianity was to a large part due to Paul, a Greek-speaking Roman citizen, who was a major initiator of the spread of Christianity, preaching extensively in Asia Minor as well as in Greece. And Christianity went on to become the predominant force in the Western culture, for the next 2,000 years. And still today, Christianity commands a great number of adherents all over the world. But in the last 2 centuries, there have been splits within Christianity, being namely Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, as well as Eastern Orthodoxy. Islam, which started in the 7th century AD in the Middle East as well. Islam derives the teachings, is derived from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. And in Islam, there is also the concept of a single God, being Allah, and Muhammad, the prophet or the apostle of Allah. Now, within Islam, there have been, according to the Islamic story, there have been a number of prophets, including Moses and Jesus, who have spoken the will of God to the people throughout history. But according to Islam, Muhammad was the final prophet and the most direct view, or the most direct line to God, according to Islamic law. Now, Islam is the second has spread worldwide over the last couple of centuries, and it's become very widespread, having more than 600 million adherents throughout the world. The majority are concentrated in North and East Africa, as well as the Middle East and Pakistan. South Africa also has quite a large Muslim population, which initially was derived from slaves brought over from the East in the 17th century. But because of proselytization, or proselytizing, the Muslim community has become quite a bit larger. Now, apart from the monotheistic religions, there are also animistic religions which rely largely on animistic religions which rely largely on the belief in spirits and ghosts. People who believe in animism believe that a spirit, whether good or evil, may influence human behavior and can cause illness or luck, etc. A lot of traditional religions are animistic in nature, and if we particularly look at African traditional religions, if we look at the Xhosa, for example, there is the belief that evil spirits as well as good spirits dwell among us as human beings, and they have the ability to inhabit human bodies and cause either luck or misfortune in the lives of people. And in recent times, the media has really cottoned on to animistic beliefs. If you look at certain TV programs that have come up in the last couple of years, such as True Blood, Heroes, Lost Girl, Dracula, Supernatural, all of these things have elements of animism in them, and they have become quite widespread in modern society. Now, if we look at totemism, which is the belief in animal or plant spirits, if you will. Let's just have a look at that. Being endowed with supernatural powers. This animism or totemism originated in North America, among the North American natives or Indians, and usually within small groups or clans, within particular kinship groups, there were different animal spirits which were all plant fauna or flora, which represented that clan and with which various rituals were associated. Now, in modern society, we have two examples of totemism that we completely take for granted, and we don't necessarily link to religious views. And the first is at sports games, there is usually a mascot, and the mascot is a totem. It represents the spirit, usually of an animal, which is meant to bring good luck to the team which it represents. And the other example of totemism is quite obscure, actually. It's spur stake ranches. If you look at the totem on the screen at the moment, you will see that it resembles quite significantly the totems that you would see in just about any spur restaurant. Now, whether or not that has religious significance, which I doubt, it has become quite widespread, as the chain is quite a widespread chain throughout South Africa. And it is actually derived from North American Indians, which I guess is the theme that spur restaurants are going for. Okay. Now, religions in the Far East. If we look at let's just go back to this. Okay, so we looked at animism and totemism. Now, polytheistic religions, such as Hinduism or ancient Greek and Roman beliefs. Polytheistic beliefs are the belief in a number of different gods. Now, within Hinduism, for example, there's one god and many incarnations of that god. Within the Greek and Roman societies, there was a community of gods, each having different powers and being lord over various elements within the world, as well as human beings. Now, if we look at Hinduism, the main doctrines are, firstly, reincarnation, which is the belief in a number of different lives. Now, reincarnation can, in lay terms, be described as the birth of a particular being, then it goes through its life cycle, and at the end, once it dies, there's a period between lives, but the soul then passes onto another body and is reborn again, and so the life cycle goes on, and it is ruled by karma, which is the life energy, which is either positive or negative. And so people, according to Hinduism, go throughout their life accumulating karma, and some of it is good karma, some of it is bad karma. But at the end of the day, once they die, they take that karma with them into their next life, which is where the caste system comes in. So the caste system is the belief that people are born into different social positions in society, predetermined by the karma of their previous incarnation. So basically, if someone, depending on the way in which a person has lived their life in a previous incarnation, that will affect what they are born into in the subsequent incarnations. So the caste system goes from lower castes up to higher castes, and with each caste there are different rituals and duties which exist. There's no mixing among castes. The social stratification in these societies are very strict, and social control, which is one of the things that, one of the functions of religion, is quite harsh within a system where there are very strict rules guiding social stratification as well as fraternization among castes. Now, when we look at religions that do not have gods, we'll be looking at three specifically, and they all originated in the Far East, and these religions are viewed as the ethical religions, where they have no gods, but are instead founded on the teachings of certain important individuals, and these individuals are seen as the figureheads, not gods, of their religion. The first being Buddhism, which came about in the 6th century BC, and Buddhism was founded by Siddhartha Gautama, who was a Hindu prince in a small kingdom in the south of Nepal. Now, the important doctrines associated with Buddhism are firstly that there is no God. Secondly, that in the continuous cycle of reincarnation, which they call samsara, human beings can escape this continual reincarnation by renouncing desire and reaching a place of spiritual enlightenment. This is the main objective of Buddhists, to reach nirvana, which is a state of complete spiritual fulfillment, after which no future incarnations need to take place. There are figures within Buddhism who are called bodhisattvas, and according to Buddhists, these people have reached enlightenment, and they choose to be reincarnated over and over again in order to teach human beings how to reach enlightenment. Confucianism, which came about at the same time as Buddhism, the 6th century BC, in traditional China, was the basis of the culture of the ruling groups in traditional China. Now, Confucius was a teacher and not a religious prophet in the manner of Middle Eastern religious leaders. So he's not followed as a god, but as one of the wisest men who have lived. Confucianism seeks to adjust human life to the inner harmony of nature, emphasizing the veneration of ancestors, much as we find in many African traditional religions. And Taoism, which is represented by the yin and yang sign, is an offshoot or has much of the same principles as Confucianism. But Taoism emphasizes the equilibrium which is brought about when both the light and dark are celebrated in harmony. Okay. Now, oops. Religion, as we see it in society, is an institution which guides our socialization as human beings. Religion serves as a binding force for communities, as well as the maintaining the status quo and conformity through their teachings and moral principles, as well as through sanctions if people deviate from the religious principles. Religion is also seen as a tool for oppression And if we look at the various theorists within sociology, there are three people who stand out most for their contributions to a sociology of religion. The first being Marx, the second being Emile Durkheim, and the third being Max Weber. Now, according to Karl Marx, religion was the opium of the masses, which that's one of his most famous sayings. And according to him, religion defers happiness and rewards to the afterlife, teaching people to be resigned to their current status within society, to their current position in society, and to accept the inequalities and injustices in the world by the promise of what is to come in the next. According to him, religious beliefs and values often provide justification for the inequalities of wealth and power in our society. Secondly, Emile Durkheim, who focused on ceremony and ritual, said that religion, or ceremony and ritual rather, are essential to the binding of members of groups together. This is why certain rituals mark coming of age, mark certain milestones in the lives of individuals and communities, as well as bringing them together in times of grief. In small traditional cultures, he argues that almost all aspects of life are permeated by religion, and religious ceremonies both originate new ideas and categorize the thoughts and reaffirm existing values. And lastly, Max Weber looked at religion and society quite extensively. He did a lot of research into religions of the East, as well as Protestantism and its influence on capitalism in Western society. And he said that the Eastern religions were not as open, or that they didn't create the right conditions for commerce and capitalism to flourish as much as Western as well as in the West. He said that the Eastern religions provided barriers to the development of industrial capitalism, and that Protestantism in the West has become almost synonymous with capitalism. Now, if we look at religion and oppression, and specifically the role of women in society, or women in religion rather, we see that in most of the mainstream religions, all of the religious imagery is male. In Judaism, for example, God is God the Father, as well as in Christianity, there's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And in Islam, God is also, Allah is male. Now, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a lot of gender equality or women's equality movements, liberation movements, cottoned onto the fact that there was so much masculinity within religion. And in 1895, Elizabeth Stanton published a series of commentaries on the Christian scriptures entitled The Women's Bible. And according to her, she said that it is that the male and female have been created equal in the eyes of God, but that due to the fact that men have written the scriptures, it is slanted in favor of men. And even today, in most of the religions, of modern day religions, and in all three of the monotheistic religions, women's rights are still underrepresented. For the most part, in Islam, in Judaism, as well as in Christianity, women are not ordained into the churches or temples or mosques as leaders, as equal to their male counterparts. Within certain denominations within the Christian faith, such as Anglicanism, the Church of England, who ordain women as priests, women by and large are still underrepresented within church leadership. In a lot of ancient societies, such as Mesopotamian societies, and a lot of the other societies in the ancient Near East, there were female deities. But these were, a lot of these religions predated Christianity, and a lot of them do not exist in modern day society any longer. What does this do for the plight of women in our society? What does it do for the self-concept of women within religious organizations and within society as a whole? How is it different being socialized in a Hindu society rather than a Christian society, when we look at the fact that there are women gods within Hinduism, and within Christianity there's an over-representation of masculinity within the Godhead. You'll be focusing on this in your reading report, which is due on the 16th of May, and you can either choose focusing on women in ministry or the chapter on sin for your reading reports. And then finally, before we log off, I just want to recap on some of the major terms that we've been, and concepts that we've been discussing. Firstly, all religions have a set of symbols involving feelings of reverence, linked to rituals that are practiced in the community of the believers. Okay. When we look at totemism and animism, these are common types of religions in smaller traditional cultures, And the totemism focuses on a species of plant or animal having supernatural powers, and animism is the belief in spirits or ghosts populating the same world as human beings, sometimes possessing them. Then we looked at monotheistic religions, the major ones being Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, or believing in one God. And then we looked at polytheism, which is the belief in numerous gods, which we find in Hinduism as well as in ancient Greek and Roman societies. And then we look at the ethical religions, which do not have a god. And the main three that we looked at were Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, all of which came about in the Far East or were introduced into society from the Far East. Then the sociological approaches to religion, we looked at Marx, Durkheim, and Weber, and the various ways in which they viewed religion in society. Marx looked at religion as the opium of the masses, and he said that we defer our happiness to a future life, and that religion facilitates the justification of inequality and power in society. Then Durkheim looked at Protestantism and capitalism in society, and he looked at the links between Protestantism and Catholicism, and he did a large study across religions, and he looked at Eastern religions as well as the monotheistic religions, and he found that the Eastern religions were not conducive to the spread of capitalism in society. And then finally we looked at Max Weber, who looked at the importance of ceremony within society and how ceremony brings people, religious communities together, and sees people through various milestone events in their life. Then we looked at religious imagery and symbolism, and we looked at their links to gender in society and gender equality in society. We see that most of the modern day religions, specifically monotheistic religions, have mainly male imagery, and that that was the focus of many women's liberation movements, looking at the equality between men and women in the eyes of God, and saying that the reason for the creation of the divide between men and women is that the scriptures were written mainly by men, and all of the prophets have been men, and therefore there was a bias in favor of men within various religions. And in 1895, Elizabeth Stanton wrote a commentary on the scriptures, which was called the Women's Bible, and it looked at equality within specifically Christianity, based on the premise that the male bias was not what God intended. Then, within our PowerPoint, within the lecture notes, we looked at secularization and the fact that it refers to the decline in the influence of religion, although we see that throughout the world religion is still quite a powerful force in the lives of people. We've seen over the last 2 centuries the decline of religion. The class activity I'd like to give you, which we'll be taking further in the discussion forum, is looking at creating a map. Now, I would like you to do this at home, and I'll be posting a discussion forum question in which you can contribute a part of your answer. So I want you to draw a map of your community, the area in which you live. I want you to mark all of the churches and chapels in that area. Now, how many of these buildings are still used for religious services? Secondly, I want you to mark other religious temples, synagogues, and mosques in your area. Now, using a different color or a different way of marking, I want you to mark places of entertainment, such as cinemas, theaters, sports grounds, swimming pools, etc., as well as shopping malls and businesses. Now, if you were an alien from outer space, sent to study the people of your town, what would you conclude about the way in which people in your society live? What do they do with their time? What are the different buildings in your area used for? And what relevance or importance is placed on religious activity as opposed to different activities such as entertainment and shopping, etc. I want you to note all of those things, and when we have the discussion when I post the discussion forum question, I will ask you for some of your answers. So think about what people in your community do with their time and how that reflects the way in which religion either plays a part in their everyday lives as opposed to other forms or to other activities. And then how does that, what can you infer about that with regard to religion and the importance of religion in your community, as well as secularization? Thank you very much for logging in, and I will see you at the next tutorial session. Thank you very much.